Ladies and gentlemen, the chairpersons of banks, Minister, Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Mthuli the PS, George Gomatanga, the Deputy Governors of the Reserve Bank, Dr. Chipika and Dr. Mlambo, my colleagues in the board at MPC. We're also happy to receive Mr. Manikai and Joe Mtizwa, who are from the Presidential Advisory Council, who are the advisors there. Let me extend also my welcome to the chairpersons of banks who are here, the CEOs, the senior government officials. I see my brother Kombabash, who is the advisor in the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Affairs and Trade, Stuart Kombabash. And also see my deputy chairman is here, KK Katande. Let me also welcome all the management of the bank and the members of the media or members of press. We are most welcome to this press conference. We are gathered here and we've called this meeting for two main purposes. The first one is for the minister to address you on the measures being taken by the government to stabilize the exchange rate and also to stabilize the inflation. As you are aware that we've got a pass-through effects which goes into inflation. So the two are much related, the exchange rate and the inflation. So the measures that the minister will be announcing here or putting in place for the Zimbabwe are basically to make sure that at least we tackle the stabilized exchange rate and also to control inflation. At the same time, the minister will also talk about the Currency Stabilization Taskforce, which is going to work continuously to ensure that the effects of the exchange rate and inflation are stabilized in this economy. The minister in this paper will also define and advise the nation on the foreign exchange regime or foreign exchange regime which we are using in Zimbabwe in line with Section 47 of the Reserve Bank Act, which requires the Minister of Finance to advise the nation on the exchange rate formulation, which is the minister's responsibility, and that of the Reserve Bank is to ensure that it's responsible to ensure that that formulated exchange rate policy is implemented. And of course, the support measures that the minister is going to advise us. So without much ado, let me call the minister to the podium. And after he's said his statement, I'll come back and share with you a few areas of interest to the market. I want to thank you, Minister. Welcome.
Colleagues, good morning. Members of the media, good morning. The Governor, Dr. Maguja, PS Finance, Gomatanga, Deputy Governor Chipika, Deputy Governor Mlambo, members of the board of the RBZ, members of the MPC, the staff from Treasury, and also staff from the RBZ. I must also maybe just do something which is now, maybe ask Ashok to stand up, Chakravati, who is a member of MPC, that he's also now officially the senior economic advisor to the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, an appointment that was made by the President a week ago. Captains of Industry, good morning. I see KK, I see Kwamba, but I'm not a captain of industry, is one of us. Advisor to SB Moyo, Minister of Foreign Affairs. They're welcome to this press briefing. I don't need my glasses to read, I only need them to see far. I'm addressing you today against the background of the recent exchange rate volatility, which is translated into unsustainable levels of inflation. In this regard, government is taking measures to stabilize the exchange rate and to bring inflation to sustainable levels in order to achieve macroeconomic stability. Macroeconomic stability is an essential component of the transitional stabilization program, critical for economic growth and the achievement of the goals set out by His Excellency in Vision 2030. In order to stabilize the exchange rate and hence to lower inflation, the government has decided to implement a holistic package of key policy measures. In this regard, a currency stabilization task force has been set up. It will be spearheaded by the Minister of Finance and Economic Development at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and it will include members of the MPC and also the Presidential Advisory Council. The task force will be chaired by the Minister of Finance and Economic Development and will meet at least once a week to review the conditions in the market, to monitor the behavior of key variables such as the exchange rate and inflation, and to ensure that the measures that I will outline below are expeditiously implemented. The task force will put in place additional policy measures where necessary. Let me now give you a broad outline of the measures that have been agreed to and that are currently under implementation in terms of this policy announcement. First of all, we are going to move or announce an exchange rate mechanism that is called a managed floating exchange rate system. I repeat, managed floating exchange. So this is a managed float as opposed to a crawling peg and other or fixed exchange rate or other exchange rate. It's a managed floating exchange rate. And I emphasize the word managed, emphasize the word also floating. Zimbabwe has had no transparent and effective foreign exchange trading platform for a long time. Consequently, official rates have not been effectively determined, while a thriving parallel market has developed. To correct this anomaly, an electronic forex trading platform based on the Reuters system is being immediately put in place. This platform will allow foreign exchange to be traded freely amongst banks and permit a true market exchange rate to be determined. The Bureau de Change or Bureau de Changes will also participate on this platform through their authorized dealers. The trading rules of the Bureau de Changes are being concluded so that they can conduct all wider range of transactions. So the number of transactions, type of transactions for bureaus is being widened, and they'll be plugged into this new Reuters-based trading system. But I must also hasten to say that it is an expectation that the system will be tightened around bureaus and make sure there are also some fiscalized machines that they're able to make use of as they transact or they effect transactions. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe will continue to be a significant player in the market, providing liquidity to stabilize the exchange rate where necessary. This mechanism will be immediately operational. All the foreign exchange requirements will be available through the interbank market, which will use a market-determined exchange rate. The specific steps and measures to be taken by government and key stakeholders to ensure the success of this system are as follows. Let me start with the commercial banks, because there are various players. You have commercial banks, you have bureaus, you have the central bank, the RBZ, you also have the Minister of Finance. So I'm going to start with the commercial banks in this ecosystem. On commercial banks, the interbank market will be operationalized based on the Reuters system, as I have said, and all banks are invited to join, and the market will be started in earnest. But of course, we expect perhaps an initial coalition of the willing to begin trading on the system, and the rest of the banks will join in the fullness of time. Banks will be the sole market makers, the main market makers. The Reuters system will generate a daily exchange rate in an AM and PM fix. Those who trade currency, you know what that means. Banks will charge bureaus very thin margins on transactions which are routed through them as authorized dealers. Let me turn to bureaus. Bureaus are to will immediately be liberalized as per the Reserve Bank rules, which are being fine-tuned. The governor will say a few words about that. And we're ready to implement. And there's been no limit on bureaus' ability to finance demand, including importers. But of course, with the importers, we expect them to work with the authorized dealers so the paperwork is correct. There's no deviation from the set system. Bureaus will be market takers, not market makers. I repeat, they'll be market takers, not market makers. They can trade foreign exchange at plus or minus 5% of the daily FX fix, whatever that is. They can go either side of that, plus or minus 5%. The bureau shall have a minimum float of $20,000. Bureaus shall, this is US dollars, bureaus shall have access to physical cash available from the Reserve Bank subject to daily limits. Cash purchases can be paid for in Zimbabwe dollars at 1-to-1 or US dollars at the daily exchange rate. All bureau requirements shall be demand driven, not supply driven. Bureaus can use excess US dollars to purchase Zimbabwe dollars cash from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Let me turn then to the next player in the ecosystem, which is the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. The RBZ will monitor daily exchange rates and intervene as necessary. They shall release foreign exchange, FX, into the interbank market based on a well-defined foreign exchange stabilization policy. They shall maintain a fully operationalized Reuters trading desk in the trading room at RBZ, so that the bids and offers by banks on the Reuters system can be monitored and influenced if required. The RBZ will liberalize use of free funds for importation of goods and services. And as you know, we've started with the fuel imports just to show how that works. The RBZ shall release any surplus funds beyond what is required for servicing essential debt and other priority government uses into the interbank market on a daily basis. The RBZ shall provide the Ministry of Finance and the MPC with precise data on daily or weekly forex inflows and estimated amounts available for release into the interbank market. The RBZ will discontinue use of letters of credit gradually and encourage all importers, including fuel importers, to access foreign exchange through the interbank market. In the interim, all letters of credit should be issued at the daily interbank rate. The RBZ will work with major importers to access and smooth their foreign exchange demand. What we mean here is if a company requires a certain amount X, that shouldn't be accessed all at once. Certainly should be spread around different banks so that we can minimize the impact of that bullet demand for forex into the market. Finally, the Reserve Bank will work with small banks who do not have significant exporter client base to access foreign exchange from the interbank market. Let me turn to supporting measures relating to money supply, liquidity management, and interest rates. To support the success of the new foreign exchange management system, the following measures are to be put in place. It should be noted that all these measures are part of our de-dollarization roadmap, so they will be introduced in a phased but time-bound manner. Government is cognizant of the fact that unrestrained increases in money supply are one of the fundamental causes of inflation and the depreciation of this exchange rate that ensues from that. Indeed, hyperinflation prior to 2009 was caused precisely by this factor. In view of this, the existing framework for fiscal and monetary discipline will be reinforced as follows. Let me start with the Minister of Finance in terms of fiscal discipline. Minister of Finance will maintain cash budgeting framework to minimize the fiscal deficit. In line with this goal, it should be noted that government has a cash surplus of over 3.1 billion as we speak, as of the end of February 2020. Number two, the Minister of Finance will project revenue and expenditure for the full financial year and announce its treasury bill issuance calendar if such financing is required in the first place. It will also ensure that treasury bill issuances for open market operations will be approved by the Monetary Policy Committee. These are for open market operations, OMO as they are called, short, so they lie within the ambit of the MPC in terms of mopping up liquidity from the market. The Minister of Finance will also smooth expenditure disbursements so that large and lumpy Zimbabwe dollar payments are not bunched, which will then probably disrupt the foreign exchange market, as we have seen some cases in the last few weeks. The Minister of Finance will also underpin the use of the Zimbabwe dollar by implementing the payment of all taxes, duties, fees, and other government charges in Zimbabwe dollars in a phased out but time-bound manner. Now, let me turn again to additional measures to be implemented by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. The RBZ will terminate the gold incentive facility once the Reuters system becomes fully functional and a unified exchange rate is achieved. It will introduce a minimum interest rate for all deposits, including trust accounts underpinning mobile banking wallets. This is to incentivize savings and to encourage the holding of domestic currency. The Reserve Bank will mop up excess liquidity being held by corporates and other large holders of Zimbabwe dollars in the banking system by introducing short-term open market operations, in short OMO, corporate bills with attractive features. Let me turn to other regulatory measures. To ensure the success of the economic measures outlined above, certain regulatory changes also need to be put into effect as a matter of urgency. One, penalties. Our laws and enforcement regime is not as effective as it should be when it comes to crimes related to foreign exchange and financial fraud. The current legal and institutional framework relating to curbing of trading on the power market is quite inadequate. The government will be reviewing all laws and institutional framework in order to bring them in line with international best practice and move importantly, and more importantly, to monitor the effectiveness of institutions charged with implementing the laws. The sanctions framework for illegal foreign exchange trading will be enhanced to provide for a range of effective but proportionate and I can't say that. I can never say this way. Sanctions that will discourage this kind of behavior, including more stringent criminal, civil, and administrative penalties. Let me turn to mobile money platforms. While mobile money platforms have made a significant contribution to facilitating trade and payments in the country, they've also become an instrument which will be used by unscrupulous businesses to illegally trade foreign exchange and undermine the economy. The Reserve Bank is therefore currently reviewing all the regulations covering such platforms. In particular, it is intended to, one, place limits on daily bulk player transactions. Number two is to ensure compliance with the 2% intermediated money transfer tax on bulk payers. Additionally, the daily returns being submitted by the mobile platforms to the Financial Intelligence Unit's FIU will be scrutinized very carefully by the Currency Stabilization Task Force to ensure that all transactions are legitimate and are in accordance with the financial regulations in place. Finally, I'd like to state that as the financial authorities of the country, it is our duty to undertake a strong communications drive to explain all the measures we are introducing and their intended outcomes. Otherwise, misinformation from social media begins to rule the day. I can assure you that it is the determination of this government under the strong leadership of His Excellency E.D. Mnangagwa to work closely with all stakeholders to achieve exchange rate stability, reduce inflation, and by the end of this year, put in place all necessary building blocks to achieve high rates of growth, poverty reduction, and the other goals of Vision 2030. I thank you.
Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for the statement and for the measures that government is putting in place to ensure that we reduce the volatility in the exchange rate and also the increase in inflation. Minister, my intention here is just to reinforce on things that you have said, which are very important. But in doing so, let me start by saying that how different economies are, Minister. Whilst the Bank of England is reducing its bank rate policy from 0.75% to 0.25% this morning at 7 a.m., so that to boost growth in the economy and also to respond to COVID-19. Here in Zimbabwe, we are fighting with the movement of rates going upwards. So I just thought it was very important to see how economies are. So they are very different. So indeed, we are in a different economy, and we need to really do what you do. In reinforcing your statement, Minister, allow me to say 3 things, or so 5 things. The first one is on the bureau de change or barrels de change. Basically, Minister, you're right, what you've said here. We are capacitating the bureau de change to ensure that they participate in the interbank foreign exchange market through the normal banking practice. Yes, as you said, Minister, we'll be looking at the authorized the bureau de change, just like the way we do at authorized dealers being the banks. Authorized the bureau de change, they are basically called authorized dealers with limited responsibility. So they are also smaller banks. Therefore, we need to monitor them, we need to provide them with the cash so that at least they can participate in the market. That we are doing. We made them last week, Minister, here, and we agreed on the framework, which we are finalizing today, so that at least they can also start doing the business tomorrow in line with the commercial banks when they also start working on this Reuters system on the foreign exchange trading platform. The second one, Minister, is on our commitment to the monetary targeting framework, which is basically there to manage the stock of money in this country. Whilst others manage their stocks, I saw my friend here from Varun, whilst their job is to manage their Pepsi cola drinks, ours is to manage the stock of money in the economy. And therefore, I will be using our reserve target market framework to ensure that it is we don't increase money to disrupt the economy. The third thing, Minister, that I want to also confirm from your statement is the gold incentive scheme. Currently, the gold incentive scheme is between 10 to 25% being given to the producers and suppliers of gold who deliver their gold to federal prisoners. On their delivery, the value in dollars, they get between 10 and 25%. So obviously, when the rates are unified, then that incentive also falls away. So that's what I just thought I should confirm that, Minister, what you've just said. And so we agreed that they are also going to be reviewing the deposit interest rates so they can pay money or they pay interest on the deposits. And that we're quite happy, Minister, that the banks they've agreed to do so. I was talking to the BAZ president, Professor Sen, who is here, and there's a commitment to ensure that this is done and done as a person of emergency or immediately. The fourth item, Minister, is the corporate bonds. The open market operations, corporate bonds, which are there basically to ensure that we meet the specific requirements of mopping the money from the market. Those are going to come again immediately, become implementable with the tenor ranging from 30 to 270 days, about 30, 60, 90, up to 270 days, and the features shall be advised in the market after we have just finalized that project. But yes, it confirmed that we discussed with the banks again yesterday, MPC, quite happy about this product. It helps us to target. Because if you look at open market operations, if you look at statutory reserves, they are blunt instruments. And therefore they affect banks much more than the targeted corporate that is that you want to move money from. So corporate bonds or bills are basically targeted to those outliers with too much money on their positions. Then, lastly, Minister, on the mobile banking platforms, we've engaged Education and Cassava on the need to ensure that we minimize the unscrupulous behavior of business practice, which we have noticed being done on this platform. The reason why we are happy with the platform is that it increases our objective on the cash-like society. So if you use the mobile platform, the digital platform is increasing the cash-like platform. But it's sometimes also being abused by those ones who want to use it as a trading platform. So we need to put a balance. We need to look at a balance scale on that matter. Whereas on one hand we are happy with the cash-like society, on the other hand we are concerned with this unscrupulous behavior being done by some people on the same platform. So that we have engaged Education Cassava, and the Education should be advising their clients about the changes that they will be doing on that platform. Once again, thank you, Minister, for the good presentation, and let me, on your behalf,